again YouTube, it's me Ariel again, and I'm here to give a quick crash course lesson in how to read the 4 major arcana. So in case you aren't already aware, the minor arcana are the suits of a tarot. So tarot is a kind of divination method, also a card game, which originates from card reading as a whole, although how we know tarot today is thought to originate from the 18th to 19th century in Europe, specifically Italy and medieval card reading. The divination purposes is from the 18th to 19th century in Europe, often considered to be credited to esoteric practices around France and England, although the history of tarot is so widespread you can take it all the way back to Chinese dynasties even making cards in the first place. When we read tarot these days, we have 4 minor arcana. The minor arcana are the suits, so the cups or chalices, the swords, the wands, and the pentacles, or sometimes called coins. These things represent different paths. So when I read tarot, tarot is a personal thing, people are going to read it differently all the time. I read the 4 suits to be like stories and journeys. And how I inform those is based on what they mean. So based on the element and what those different icons signify. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So let's start with cups. Cups is the water suit. This means that it relates to the element of water. The reason that it relates to the element of water is because the cup suit is about fulfillment, emotions, and ultimately going after what makes you feel emotionally fulfilled. It's quite simple in that way, but obviously as you work through the journey of the cups, things start to take twists and turns, things go right, things go wrong, and you'll need to change or develop in certain ways. So for instance, when we start at the Ace of Cups, what we're seeing is a new beginning, a brand new journey towards a sense of fulfillment. Maybe something new is fulfilling you. Sometimes it can relate to a brand new relationship which is coming around, since relationships tend to make us feel emotionally fulfilled, or it can relate to something like a new hobby. It really has no one way that you could read it. It depends on what you're specifically talking about in the reading that you're doing. Then we can move up to, let's say, 3 of Cups. So 3 of Cups is traditionally known for creativity and communication, and that's because the 3 in the kind of card and numbers for tarot tends to relate to an opportunity. So something that's coming in, not so much a new beginning, but something which is changing on that path. So the path of the cups in this instance. 3 of Cups is going to mean that you have maybe like a new facet of a hobby, or maybe a new friend joining a group, or something is going to be changing about how you feel fulfilled in what you're doing, and maybe even how you are going about your life in general. I'm very tentative to use the word desire, because desire is more so to do with wands. So the wand suit is the fire suit. They're kind of, I suppose you could consider them opposites, although they're not in tarot. They're not really opposites, but if you were to look at them as desire for wands, whereas cups is almost a natural sense of fulfillment, that could be something that you watch the difference between. So when we see wands, what we're seeing is efforts, energies, and like I already said, desires. As we go through the wands journey, what we're focusing on is how we get what we want and the efforts that we put into getting what we want. So a card that you might know a lot about, I seem to personally get this card come up a lot in readings, is the 6 of Wands. The 6 of Wands is recognition and victory, and this stands for when we kind of triumph over the things we're trying to do, and when we are capable of seeing all of our hard work paying off, to put it simply. So for instance, somebody who maybe has a new business and just reached 15,000 followers on Instagram would be seeing the 6 of Wands happening in their life. So when you're trying to look for the difference between what you just naturally feel and naturally gravitate towards and something you're pushing your desire into, you'd have cups and wands. So that's water and fire. And you can apply the kind of symbolic meaning of elements to the suits quite easily. So that's ultimately what we're doing. With water, you have emotions and being kind of surrounded by water, kind of swimming and being underneath the water is kind of a immersive experience, and that's what we're getting with cups, the idea that it's kind of organic and all-encompassing. We're not kind of choosing to feel that fulfillment, it's something which is natural to us. Whereas with wands, fire blazes through, it's changing, it's burning the environment. It can be made in a second by us in a way that we can't make water, so to speak. And it's a choice, so we can choose to light a flame in a way we can't choose to make an ocean. And so with wands, what we're seeing is actually a choice to bring desire and a choice to make a change. It's kind of like a cultivating energy. So like I've already mentioned, creation. You are taking one little spark at the Ace of Wands and turning it into an entire fire, an entire blaze when you get to the King of Wands. So that brings us on to the last two suits. The next suit that we'll talk about is going to be Pentacles. So Pentacles is the Earth suit. Kind of in line with astrology, so there is a link between astrology and tarot, which we aren't really talking about today, is the fact that Pentacles is related to possessions and ultimately our values. So the suit of Pentacles is all about wisdom, since it's a kind of a mental value, but also what you have and garnering a physical sense of stability. So for instance, a card some of you may already know about is the Four of Pentacles. So stability and security and comfort. Often considered to be a card which is showing when you're kind of getting to a point in life where you are more secure and happy feeling in what you have. Maybe you've just moved house, maybe you're in a kind of, you just got married, or you're in a job which gives you some more security, you might see Four of Pentacles. So when we have the Earth suit of Pentacles, what we're seeing is a journey towards the life and physical, tangible things we'd like to see. That doesn't have to be a trivial thing. That does not mean that we're just seeing all the stuff we'd like to have. In fact, it's a lot more than that. So Pentacles is a suit that you would relate to business, taking classes, university, and further education, because it's all about how we go to obtain the things we want. So to relate to the suits we've already talked about, fire is the desire and the energy we put in. Cups is the organic feelings we have for the journey ahead of us, but Pentacles is what we're actually doing. And so what that means is that if you have Pentacles coming up, you're seeing your physical journey, the learning you're doing, or the things you're actually working towards. So one of my favourite Pentacles cards is the Nine of Pentacles. And that's because I like to refer to it as graduation or finishing some sort of course or coming to the end, well, near enough to the end of a kind of period of time where you've been learning what to do on your journey or cultivating the necessary knowledge to go forward and become a teacher in other terms. So that brings us to the very last suit, which is the Swords suit. So the Swords is the air suit, typical traditional elements right there. And the Swords is definitely an interesting one because it gets a bad rep. So Swords is known as being the bad suit because it relates to struggles. But it isn't just about struggles. Obviously it literally is because we're talking about swords. And a lot of the cards are based on kind of being stabbed in the back, facing rejection and being defensive and things like that. But it also relates to the element of air, because air is logical, reasonable, and kind of experience oriented in that way. So using the mind to create an experience or to learn from an experience, and swords is the same. So at the very start of a swords journey, we see kind of clarity and mentality and becoming ready to face an experience. But by the time we get to the tens and the kings and the queens and things like that, so the later part of the suit, we see someone who has learnt from their experiences and who isn't just reading from a textbook or reasoning with what they think would happen, but using their actual knowledge to inform their decisions. So in my personal opinion, I think King of Swords is one of the most powerful minor arcana cards because the King of Swords is the master of his own reason. Master of his wounds, the master of their experiences. The King of Swords is somebody who has been through a lot in life and they have learnt from what has happened. So you may find that this card is your descriptor after a terrible event, or when you have taken some time out to learn from your mistakes, or perhaps when you've actively tried to become a better person and to change things that you may have done wrong in the past. Equally, the Queen of Swords is another brilliant card. So the queens in the Minor Arcana, I like to refer to them as teachers. So the queens are people who have learnt a lot from their experiences and they want to help other people who are maybe lower down in their journey to do so. So what I'm doing right now is very much a Queen of Swords-ish in a way. I'm using my experience with tarot to kind of educate and talk about tarot to all of you on YouTube today. whereas the king is somebody who is even above this. They have realized that teaching other people is not how you get to their point in life. There's only so much you can teach without having to experience it. And so that is how I read the Minor Arcana. How do you read the Minor Arcana? Drop it below. Maybe even talk about your favorite cards, whatever it is. I don't mind. Let's have a conversation. But for now, that is my quick 10-minute lesson on how you could quickly relate to the Minor Arcana, the general themes that each have and their elements. So hopefully you have enjoyed the lesson today. If you would like to, you can check me out on other platforms with the link below. But for now, YouTube, goodbye.